Good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Friday filled with good health, peace, success, and plenty of great news. Steelers Nation, welcome back. The excitement surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers is only getting bigger as the preseason rolls on, and today we have some major updates that every fan in the black and gold family needs to hear. There are important developments coming out of Pittsburgh that could have a significant impact on the team moving forward, so make sure you stay with me until the very end because you won't want to miss a single detail. But before we get started, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not already part of our Steelers community, and turn on notifications so you never miss any breaking news, exclusive reports, roster updates, or everything happening around the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, without wasting another second, let's dive into today's biggest headlines and everything you need to know about your Pittsburgh Steelers. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. The Steelers are finally starting to look like the kind of defense that can control games from the inside out. And after another intense day of training camp, one thing is becoming impossible to ignore. This defense is getting noticeably stronger in the middle, and that development could end up changing everything once the regular season begins. While much of the attention throughout camp has naturally gone toward the edge rushers and the star names, what happened during this latest practice suggested that the real story may actually be unfolding between the defensive tackles and the linebackers. The biggest takeaway from practice wasn't simply that players were making tackles or winning individual drills, it was how connected the front seven looked. The young defensive linemen are beginning to establish themselves physically, and as they occupy offensive linemen more consistently, they're creating cleaner opportunities for the linebackers behind them. That is exactly what this defense has been searching for. Instead of linebackers constantly fighting through traffic, they're beginning to attack downhill with confidence, speed, and much better timing. Patrick Queen looks like a completely different player compared to earlier stages of the offseason. Throughout this practice, he appeared comfortable, decisive, and much faster in recognizing what was happening in front of him. Rather than reacting late, he was attacking running lanes, filling gaps aggressively, and even creating pressure that would have resulted in sacks during live game situations. Just as importantly, he appears far more comfortable within Patrick Graham's defensive system, where communication has become one of the biggest priorities throughout camp. But perhaps the most exciting development is what has been happening alongside him with Payton Wilson. Wilson was arguably the standout performer during this practice. His improvement isn't just showing up in splash plays, it's showing up in the small technical details that coaches love to see. One of the biggest concerns surrounding his game had been his ability to deal with offensive linemen once they reached him at the second level. Too often in previous seasons, if a blocker got his hands on Wilson, the play was essentially over. Now, that no longer appears to be the case. During practice, Wilson consistently used better hand placement, maintained separation with his length, and shed blocks much more efficiently before finishing plays against the run. Those improvements are not accidental. They're the result of months of technical work, studying film, and refining his fundamentals throughout the offseason. Wilson himself explained that the offseason gave him an unexpected opportunity to grow as a leader. With several veterans unavailable during portions of OTAs because of contract situations, he found himself taking on much greater responsibility within the defense. That forced him to communicate more, organize teammates, and build confidence running the defense. According to Wilson, those extra responsibilities became one of the biggest reasons his confidence continued to grow before training camp even began. Just as significant is the relationship developing between Wilson and Patrick Queen. Wilson openly credited Queen for helping accelerate his development since arriving in Pittsburgh. He described Queen as someone who has always treated him like an equal instead of simply a younger teammate. Whenever Wilson makes mistakes, Queen is there to correct them, encourage him, and help him improve. That chemistry is beginning to show on the practice field, where the two linebackers appear to be communicating almost effortlessly before every snap. Communication has become one of the strongest themes of training camp. Earlier in camp, Patrick Queen explained that everyone across the defense is talking constantly. Safeties, linebackers, defensive linemen, outside linebackers, and even cornerbacks are communicating more than ever. Queen specifically praised Payton Wilson for helping handle green dot responsibilities and making adjustments before the snap, saying Wilson's presence has been especially valuable within Patrick Graham's defense because of how much flexibility players are given based on different fronts and coverages. If that communication continues improving alongside the physical development happening up front, the Steelers could be building exactly the kind of defensive identity they have been searching for. The defensive line deserves plenty of credit for that progress. The younger linemen continue to flash throughout camp. Yahya Black has consistently displayed improved pad level, stronger leverage, and much better discipline with his physical play. Derek Harmon continues to build on an already impressive start to camp, while the overall rotation appears capable of keeping offensive linemen occupied long enough to free the linebackers behind them. Combined with established veterans throughout the interior, that could become one of the biggest strengths of this defense once meaningful football begins. The encouraging part is that this isn't only about stopping the run. Within Patrick Graham's defensive structure, linebackers are expected to handle multiple responsibilities. They're heavily involved in disguise packages, coverage adjustments, and pre-snap communication alongside the secondary. If Patrick Queen and Payton Wilson continue progressing the way they have during camp, the Steelers may finally have two linebackers capable of staying on the field, regardless of whether offenses are expected to run or pass. That kind of versatility could dramatically increase what this defense is capable of doing throughout the season. After watching this latest practice, it's becoming increasingly clear that the conversation isn't simply about individual players anymore. It's about an entire defensive unit beginning to find its identity together. The physicality is improving, the communication is improving, the confidence is growing, and if these trends continue over the remainder of training camp, the Steelers may be building one of the most complete front sevens they've had in quite some time. But here's the question for Steelers Nation. Based on everything that's happening in training camp, do you believe the partnership between Patrick Queen and Payton Wilson can become one of the best linebacker duos in the NFL this season? As the intensity of practice continued to rise, something else became just as noticeable. The Steelers weren't simply executing drills anymore. They were competing with real emotion, and that competitive edge started showing itself all over the field. After several relatively controlled practices earlier in camp, this session produced the kind of physical, emotional atmosphere coaches actually like to see. Players were talking, pushing each other after plays, defending teammates, and showing exactly how badly they want to win their individual battles. One of the biggest moments came when tensions flared between Patrick Queen and wide receiver Ben Skowronek. What began as an exchange quickly escalated after contact between the two, and Payton Wilson immediately stepped in to defend Queen. Wilson knocked Skowronek to the ground before Pat Freiermuth rushed over to stand up for his offensive teammate. Despite how heated it looked, everything settled down almost immediately, and there was never any indication that the players had genuine issues with one another. Instead, it reflected something coaches often hope to see during training camp: teammates pushing each other to become better while refusing to let anyone challenge one of their own without a response. Payton Wilson later explained that these moments are simply part of life during training camp. Players are tired, sore, and competing every single day. According to him, everyone understands that brothers fight. Tempers can flare during practice, but once the helmets come off, they're sitting together eating lunch like nothing happened. When asked specifically about stepping in to defend Patrick Queen, Wilson made it clear that Queen is one of his closest friends on the team, and in that moment, protecting his teammate came naturally, even though he also considers Ben Skowronek a friend. That answer probably says more about the chemistry inside this locker room than the actual confrontation itself. Those weren't the only signs of growing competitiveness. Another sequence drew plenty of attention when running back Lou Nichols delivered a powerful block that completely pancaked a defensive back who had blitzed into the backfield. The collision immediately attracted players from both sides, adding even more energy to an already physical practice. Again, nothing crossed the line, but it reinforced the idea that these practices are no longer simply about learning assignments. They're becoming genuine competitions where every rep matters. The common phrase around football is iron sharpens iron, and throughout this practice, that expression seemed to come alive. The offensive line and defensive front continue battling on nearly every snap, creating one of the most fascinating storylines of camp. Zach Frazier has embraced that mentality completely. He admitted that playing with physicality and trying to knock defenders backward is simply what he enjoys most about playing offensive line. When asked about repeatedly facing Nick Herbig during practice, Frazier smiled while acknowledging that Herbig talks constantly, but made it clear that he enjoys those battles because they force both players to improve. Those individual matchups may ultimately become one of the biggest advantages this team carries into the regular season. Every day, the offensive line is challenged by an aggressive defensive front featuring players who continue developing together. At the same time, the defensive front has to solve an offensive line that is growing stronger with every practice. Mason McCormick described those battles exactly the way many coaches would hope, calling it good competition between two talented groups that continue making each other better every single day. That internal competition could pay enormous dividends once the regular season begins because players won't be seeing unfamiliar physicality for the first time in September. They'll already have spent weeks facing teammates capable of matching playoff level intensity. Training camp also brought another roster move that deserves attention. The Steelers added safety Israel Mukawamu, a player whose profile immediately stands out because of his size. Standing 6'4" and weighing 215 pounds, Mukawamu brings a unique physical presence to the secondary. However, his addition shouldn't necessarily be viewed as the answer to every question at safety. According to the information discussed after practice, his background suggests he projects primarily as an important contributor on special teams, rather than someone immediately expected to become a full-time defensive starter. His familiarity with Mike McCarthy also makes the signing understandable. Mukawamu entered the NFL with Dallas after being selected during